The Los Angeles Dodgers traveled to Houston for the final game of a 6-game road trip, and what unfolded over the course of 9 innings, and the chaotic moments that followed, produced one of the most talked-about nights in recent MLB history. A 12-2 blowout victory was already enough to make headlines, but it was what happened after the final out that sent shockwaves through the baseball world. Before getting to that, let us walk through how this game played out, because the action on the field was just as remarkable as the chaos that followed it. The Dodgers entered this contest needing a strong finish to close out their road trip. Shohei Ohtani had been moved to the leadoff spot, serving as the designated hitter, a strategic decision by manager Dave Roberts designed to get Ohtani more plate appearances and, critically, to spark him out of a prolonged slump that had the entire Dodgers fanbase watching closely. However, it was Houston that struck first, and they struck fast. Tyler Glasnow, the Dodgers starting pitcher, had barely settled in when the Astros leadoff batter connected on the very first pitch he saw and sent it over the fence for a home run. Houston led 1-0 before the Dodgers had even recorded an out. It was a jarring start, and the early concern in the Dodgers dugout was visible. Glasnow, one of Los Angeles' most important starters, now had to navigate his way through a hostile Minute Maid Park crowd that was immediately energized. The Dodgers refused to stay down, and the second inning provided the first sign that this was going to be Los Angeles' night. Kyle Tucker opened the frame with a double to right field, immediately putting the Astros on notice. The inning continued, and with 2 outs still on the board, Dalton Rushing delivered a clutch single to extend the rally and keep the pressure on Lance McCullers Jr., Houston's starter. What ultimately tied the game, however, was not a big swing. It was McCullers Jr. himself who did the damage. A wild pitch allowed the Dodgers to score, and just like that, the score was knotted at 1-1. The momentum had quietly begun to shift toward Los Angeles. Just as the Dodgers had steadied the game, they were dealt a significant blow between innings. Tyler Glasnow felt physical discomfort and was forced to exit the game after completing just 1 inning of work. For a team that had invested heavily in Glasnow's presence in the rotation, losing him this early in a road game was an alarming development. The bullpen was now called upon far earlier than anyone had planned. Jack Dreher entered the game under pressure and faced the task of keeping the Astros' potent lineup in check. Dreher responded to the moment, working through the Houston lineup and keeping them off the scoreboard. It was a critical contribution that kept the Dodgers in a position to attack offensively. If there was a single moment when this game was decided, it came in the top of the 3rd inning. What followed was a sequence of events that will be discussed by both fan bases for years to come. Alex Freeland opened the inning with a walk, establishing the first base runner. Then Shohei Ohtani stepped in. After going hitless for an extended stretch, Ohtani drove a double to right field, immediately placing runners in scoring position. The stadium, which had been buzzing from the early Astros home run, began to sense something was changing. The Astros then committed 2 wild pitches in the same inning, a stunning display of pitching unraveling at the worst possible moment. The Dodgers capitalized on both, pushing across 2 runs without even needing a significant hit. Houston's battery was gifting Los Angeles base runners and bases at the same time. Then came Andy Pease. The young outfielder stepped to the plate and hit a 3-run home run to left field that exploded the dugout and fundamentally flipped the tone of the entire game. In total, the Dodgers sent 5 runs across the plate in the 3rd inning alone. What had been a tight 1-1 ballgame was now a 5-1 lead for Los Angeles, and the Astros looked completely rattled. A lesser team might have coasted once they had built a comfortable lead on the road. The Dodgers refused to take their foot off the accelerator. Houston's pitching staff was still struggling to find any rhythm, and the Dodgers exploited every mistake. Another run was added in the 4th inning, continuing to bleed the Astros pitching core and forcing the Houston coaching staff to burn through their bullpen earlier than intended. The lead continued to grow, and the Astros were firmly in damage control mode with no visible path back into the game. The 5th inning delivered 2 individual performances that demanded attention separately. First, Andy Pease stepped back into the spotlight. After his monstrous 3-run shot in the 3rd inning, Pease had already guaranteed himself a memorable game. He made it even more remarkable by hitting his 2nd home run of the night, a display of power and timing that left the Minute Maid Park crowd silent. Pease had now driven in 4 runs by the 5th inning alone, and there was still plenty of baseball left to play. Then there was Ohtani. Already having doubled earlier in the game, Ohtani came through again with an RBI single to left field. It was not a home run, but that was precisely the point. Ohtani's value to the Dodgers goes far beyond his home run production. This was a demonstration of situational hitting, of a player making contact when the team needed it, driving in a run with a composed, well-placed single. By the time the 5th inning concluded, the Dodgers led 10-1. The game, for all practical purposes, was over, but the night was far from finished. The game continued to progress in the Dodgers' favor as both teams exchanged single runs across the later innings, pushing the score to 11-2. What was notable about the Dodgers' bullpen performance on this night was its collective consistency. 6 relievers combined to allow just 1 run after Glasnow's early departure. In a game where the starting pitcher was lost in the 1st inning, that kind of bullpen depth is the difference between a competitive game and a statement victory. The Dodgers got the latter. The Astros, already exhausted and outmatched, were forced to take an unusual step in the 9th inning. they brought in position player Cesar Salazar to pitch. When a team turns to a position player on the mound, it signals that they have run out of options and are simply trying to survive the rest of the game. Andy Pease had different ideas. With Salazar on the mound, Pease stepped in and hit his third home run of the game, completing what is known as a hat trick, an extremely rare feat in professional baseball where a single player hits 3 home runs in one game. It was the first career hat trick for Pease, and it came on the largest possible stage, a road game in Houston, in the final game of a 6-game road trip, against an Astros team that had no answer for him all night. The final score was Dodgers 12, Astros 2. Los Angels had clinched the series. Pease finished the game with 3 home runs and 6 RBI, a statistical line that would have been hard to believe even in a video game, let alone in a real MLB game against a major league pitching staff. While Pease rightfully commanded much of the attention on the offensive side, Shohei Ohtani's individual performance carried its own significance. Ohtani had entered this game in the middle of a 26-game hitless streak, a stretch that had drawn significant scrutiny and concern from fans, analysts, and commentators across the sport. For a player of Ohtani's caliber, a generational talent who had reshaped the expectations of what a baseball player could be, going 26 games without a hit was a story that had dominated headlines for weeks. On this night, that drought ended. Ohtani finished the game 2 for 4 with 1 RBI, 1 walk, and 1 stolen base. His final line on the night was modest by comparison to Pease's, but the significance of those 2 hits extended far beyond the box score. With his season stats sitting at a .248 batting average and .831 OPS, Ohtani had now shown concrete signs of returning to the form that had made him the most compelling player in the sport. The hitless streak was over, and the question now shifted from whether Ohtani was struggling to whether this performance was the beginning of a return to full dominance. The Dodgers were banking on the latter, and then came the moment that no one could have anticipated, the moment that transformed a dominant Dodgers victory into something far more disturbing. After the final out was recorded, the Dodgers players gathered near the dugout to celebrate what had been a commanding series-clinching win on the road. The mood in the Los Angeles camp was positive. They had overcome the early loss of their starting pitcher, received a historic performance from a young outfielder, and watched their most important player break a prolonged slump. Then 3 Astros players approached Shohei Ohtani aggressively. What followed was not a standard baseball scuffle, the kind of heated exchange that occasionally follows a competitive game. What unfolded near the dugout was a physical altercation in which 3 players from the Houston Astros directly confronted and attacked Ohtani. The crowd fell into stunned silence. Players, coaches, and security personnel scrambled to respond. Freddie Freeman, Andy Pease, and Will Smith, 3 of Ohtani's own teammates, rushed immediately to defend him, inserting themselves between Ohtani and the Astros players. The scene escalated quickly, with coaches from both sides and security staff rushing onto the field to separate the involved parties and prevent further escalation. Manager Dave Roberts was furious. He demanded immediate action from the umpires on the field and made clear in no uncertain terms that the Dodgers would be filing a formal complaint with Major League Baseball. Ohtani himself, despite being the direct target of the attack, maintained a composed and non-aggressive demeanor throughout the incident, a response that earned him immediate and widespread respect from those watching both at the stadium and across the baseball world. Major League Baseball moved quickly following the incident. The league launched an urgent investigation, collecting video footage from multiple angles and taking statements from players, coaches, umpires, and team officials present at the scene. The league's official statement addressed the incident directly, characterizing intentional aggression as completely unacceptable behavior and signaling that disciplinary action would follow. The central question now facing the sport was not simply about the punishment that would be handed down, though suspensions were widely expected, but about what this incident revealed about Ohtani's position in the league more broadly. As the highest-paid player in MLB history and the most internationally recognized face of the sport, Ohtani has become a uniquely high-profile target. The psychological pressure that opposing players and teams feel when facing a player of his magnitude is real, and it occasionally manifests in ways that cross the boundaries of accepted competitive behavior. This incident represented the most extreme version of that dynamic. 3 players from the same team coordinated an approach toward a single opposing player in the moments after a game had ended, not in the heat of an on-field play, but in the deliberate, calculated aftermath of a loss. That detail alone set this incident apart from the routine altercations that occasionally arise during the course of a baseball season. What punishments MLB ultimately issued, which players were suspended, and how many games those suspensions covered remain to be determined. But the league's response and the speed with which the investigation was launched sent a clear message that this was being treated with the seriousness the situation demanded. For the Dodgers, the night ended with 12 runs on the board, a series victory, a historic performance from Andy Pease, a slump-breaking night from Shohei Ohtani, and a formal complaint filed with the league office. It was a night that contained multitudes, a dominant team performance, an individual record, a personal milestone, and a disturbing act of aggression that now sits in the hands of the most powerful office in American baseball. The story of what happened in Houston on this night, all of it, was far from over.